People can copy the subscription model. They can start sharing. They can go at a lower price. I just think you can copy everything, but you can't copy an experience. And that's what we create with the brand, is try to create an experience. That's also why we have the clubs, so that you can build an experience which, even if people copy the product, the service, the price, you can never copy the experience. Hi, I'm Alain Visser, and you're listening to GUTT Talks, GGUTT.
Hi everyone, I'm Maria and welcome to GUTT Talks, a podcast brought to you by GUTT, GGUTT.com. I enjoy adding value and helping wherever I can, widening my spectrum of thoughts even if it can sometimes challenge the mainstream. This is why we give data a voice and co-create a collective intelligence involving both people who are not always in the limelight and those who are, in order to learn from each other and spread knowledge, creative and critical thinking. To date, we've had guests from over 35 countries and counting. All I ask is to rate the show, leave a review and share it. It's a fantastic way to help other podcast explorers discover our content. Now let's get started. I'm thrilled to share this episode with Alain Visser, who came on the show for a thought-provoking episode about the future of mobility. Alain brings over 35 years of global automotive executive experience with senior roles with Volvo and his positions as CEO of Lynk&Co and Senior Vice President at Geely Group. At the time this episode is published, Alain is the founder and ex-CEO of Lynk&Co. We recorded it back end of 2023. We discussed his journey throughout his extensive career that inspired his new endeavor, backed by savvy business acumen, enabling potentially unthinkable innovation even within large established traditional organizations. This conversation will trigger additional thoughts, hoping it can spark innovative thinking and action-taking in many listeners. So, here we go. Alain, thank you so much for being on GUTT Talks.
It's a pleasure.
I'm super excited. Awesome. So I want to give a shout out to Emil, who connected us because I saw your panel, actually discussion at an event in Milan a couple of months ago. And I was like, okay, he's not going anywhere. I want to have him on my podcast. And then I couldn't find you. So I was like, Emil, please link us up, because I couldn't find you during the break. Because actually there was no break at this event. So anyway, I also want to thank your team actually for making this happen, and Carlotta in particular. So at this event, you made some bold statements. And I was like, I like it when just people say what they think, how they feel, and don't really care because you know what you're talking about. You've been in the car manufacturing industry, to be very specific, for, you said, 36 years?
Yeah,
or so,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And you stayed in this space, but in a wider scope, focusing on mobility. And that's what we're going to talk about. And you made so many statements, and I was like, okay, we need to dig a bit deeper into that and see what's going to happen, because it's a busy space. Things are happening, but there are many opportunities as well at the same time. But I want to start with a few, maybe an anecdote, because if you said you've been selling cars your whole life, and then you had this kind of aha moment when you were talking to your kids and asked you, what have you actually done in your life? And you were like, I just sold cars. Right? I'm trying to get into your head here. What made you realize that you were just selling cars, like, again and again, and you were like, enough's enough?
Yeah.
What did you tell yourself? Yeah. What the hell am I doing? What happened?
I must say, I've been, in the last years, during that period that I work in the car industry, I've been quite shocked and disappointed that it's always the same. And when I see how the industry was when I started in 86, and how it was then, I thought it's really the same. The only thing that is a bit different is the car. And then even the car, you could say that a smartphone has evolved more in the last 5 years than a car in the last 50 years. So there's this arrogance about this industry that is a bit misplaced. And then, even though I think I was doing well and I was happy and I did well in my career, and then I had this open discussion one dinner evening with my two boys, and they're 24 and 28. They're very millennials. They're very open-minded thinking. And of course, I've been traveling a lot during my whole career. So I have not spent really enough time, I think, with the boys. And so they sort of asked me then suddenly this question, so Dad, what have you done your whole career? And it was sort of like a question where I said, what do you mean? I said, you know what I've done. And then I came after sort of a half a minute silence, I think, came to the almost like disappointing conclusion. I've sold cars. And they looked at me and almost smiled and sort of laughed at me like, is that it? And I actually inside had that same reflection. Is that it? And I think, shit, if I don't do something now, I'm going to retire one day and say, I've spent my whole life selling cars. That just can't be it. So I was then really considering to quit actually and do something very differently until I got, by really coincidence, a year later, the opportunity to start a new brand. And I thought, wow, instead of doing something very different, maybe I can do something different in this industry and try to change it from within. And that's when we started Lynk&Co. But that's indeed been the starting point, sort of this brutal realization that what I had been doing is maybe cool, but it's definitely not good enough. And then to really to try to change it from within. So it was actually my sons who were like the trigger points to do something about this.
So shout out to them.
Yeah,
I think
and I
now
love them.
they don't ask
Yeah.
you this question anymore, right?
No, they have not really been so interested in what I did because for them it was boring. Cars is boring for them. They're real millennials. They don't even have a driver's license, believe it or not. Now, okay, that has to do probably in revolting against their dad more than anything else, but it's a sign. And so they were not really interested. And now when we open clubs, and you may have seen our club in Milan, which are quite different, my sons want to attend. And I see that as a personal victory, that my sons are suddenly interested in what I do. I think that's, for me, a personal big achievement.
Nice. I mean, I just like this, how you presented this and how you're presenting it today again. And so there's always a trigger. And that was the trigger for you in a way. Just going back to the name of this podcast, and I guess it's the right place to ask this question. What's your relationship with your gut feeling?
Oh, it's very big. And I'm sure there's a lot of businessmen who would say that it's too big, because I do believe that you need to work with data. But I always say the biggest changes and the biggest inventions don't come from data, they come from gut. I always give the example, if Steve Jobs had done a research on do people want a screen or instead of buttons as a keyboard, we would have never had the smartphone, because I'm sure people would have said, no, I want my buttons. I don't want it on a screen. And yet he went to the screen because he had the gut feeling it's just easier. And I had the same. I was convinced that what we're going to do is going to work. But I'm sure if we would have asked people and to do a whole clinical analysis on it, it would have killed it. Data can sometimes kill good ideas as well. So I think you need to find the right balance. But in my personal case, of course, my experience has helped, as I have a lot of experience in this industry. So it by definition, there's a lot of experience in there. But it's really, I am a strong believer that the gut feeling is so important. And I would dare to say that it's because of lack of that the industry is still what it is today. I personally believe the car industry today is not so much different to 100 years ago. There's a lot of blah, blah, but this industry lacks gut feeling.
I like how you put that together. I think that's going to be a short clip anyway. So you said you had this opportunity to start a new brand. How did that come about?
Yeah, well, the background is maybe a bit more dry, but I was the head of sales and marketing at Volvo Cars. Volvo Cars was owned by the Geely Group. And in that group, there was a new car platform being made called CMA, which was the basis of the Volvo XC40, also of the Polestar 2. And there was a desire to create a third car and create a car brand based on that third car, which was basically almost done, designed, engineered. So for me, it was like the opportunity to say, yeah, okay, great, but I'm not going to start selling cars with dealerships and do what everybody else is doing. That's what I've done my whole life. And yes, I can do that, but that's not what I want to do. That's boring. That's not exciting. So I then went to the owner in China and presented my ideas, which is actually what we're doing today. And the first reaction was they looked at me as if I had smoked the wrong substance. So it was not so very popular from the beginning. I have to be honest. It was not that they said, wow, cool idea. They really thought I was a little bit crazy. So instead of changing it, I went back with more and more arguments of doing it. And then I have to give them credit because then they said, okay, recruit some people. And that was back in 2015. I started the company 1st of October 2015 with 0 employees. I was alone. I left my Volvo job where I had about 3,000 people and started totally alone. And yeah, really with the idea of let's do something very different and not do a car company. There's too many. I've always said the last thing this world needs is another car brand. There's too many already. So I started alone that day, which was probably the only day in my whole career where I really thought like, oh God, what have I done? But now 7 years later, it's the best decision I've ever taken.
Yeah, actually, you touched on a few things I wanted to ask, and you started on your own, so that was like really a lonely journey, obviously. And in an industry that hasn't changed for many years. I mean, what happened in China's with EVs, I'm gonna be very specific on that one as well, is not what's happening in Europe. Like, there's also lots of contamination, and you look at the bigger picture in general, just based on your model, which we're gonna get to. How was this lonely journey, and how did you convince people to come on board? Did you find people outside the industry to come with you because you wanted a fresh way
Yeah.
of doing things? How was it?
Yeah, in the beginning, I have to admit it was very difficult because I had my business idea. We didn't even have a name. The name Lynk&Co didn't exist. We were a sister of Volvo, owned by Geely, and we were going to do a cool lifestyle mobility brand. So if you tell that to people coming from other industries, they say, what the hell is he talking about? So it was quite difficult in the beginning. We didn't have the brand. We didn't have a reputation. People knew some in the industry, they knew who I was. Outside of the industry, nobody, of course, knew me. So in the beginning, it was difficult. It was difficult to recruit people. And look, I started alone. The first 3 months, we were 5. I could recruit 4 people. I got the help from Volvo, who said, okay, if you need somebody now, you can recruit some of the people within Volvo. So I knew everybody in Volvo. So I recruited some people, some of which are still there, that I know understood what I wanted, to do something radically different. But beyond that, the majority of the people I recruited and we recruited came from other industries. We're now about 1,200. No, I started alone. I think about 80% of these people that are working now with Lynk&Co have never worked in the car industry. And I've learned that if you want to change an industry, you need to bring in other people. I've always said if you want to be relevant to a certain type of customer, you need to bring that customer in. That's my strong conviction. And 80% have never worked in the car industry of our employees. And also, I'm particularly proud that about 50% of our employees are women in an industry that is so terribly macho. It's almost embarrassing. And I think, look, we want to be relevant to men and women, so let's make sure we have an equal proportion between men and women in the company. I think the kind of people that work in the company is going to determine what the company is. So I thought it was so important to recruit the right people. But as I said in the beginning, it was difficult because it was difficult to sell the idea, as it was just an idea. It wasn't a company yet.
You touched on a few points here. You mentioned Steve Jobs earlier, who was driven by design. Based on what you're saying, also bringing customers in, involving them, getting people from different stakeholders, putting them all together. You're driven by design in a way, in the way you also determine what's going to be in the car. Because at the end of the day, yes, you have a car, but you also in mobility more than the car itself. So what's your view, the design of the business?
Yeah, no, I think it's so essential. And that's the part that I got so excited about, because the design of the businesses in this industry hasn't changed. That's the thing that fascinates me and shocks me, is that this contrast between what is happening in the world in the last years, the new trends. I find it fascinating, these new trends, the consumer trends. And you see that a lot of industries are changing. The retail world, everything is the communication world. Everything is changing because people are changing. And the car industry does the same. We design cars, engineer cars, we ship them, we build them in our big factories, and then we send them to dealers, and the dealers sell and fix them. And then you think, how come that this industry isn't changing? And I find one of the most, for me, interesting trends that I see happening in the last 10 years, maybe even more, is the fact that people seem to care more about experiences than about ownership. I like to call it the dematerialization. People spend more money on doing things than on buying things. And it's fascinating. It's so fascinating. And let's face it, that should happen in the car or in the mobility industry too. People want to be mobile. That hasn't changed. But to be mobile, you don't necessarily need to own a car. You need to use a car. But for me, the most mind-blowing statistic in my career is the fact that the average car on this planet stands still for 96% of the time. So this is the second most important purchase in a human being's life after a house. But you use it for 4% of the time. Imagine you buy a house, but you only live in it for 10 days per year or 15 days per year. That's basically what we're saying here. The car stands still for 96% of the time. And if that is the case, then why do you need to own one? It doesn't make sense. So we said then there's a need to change that. The world is changing, so why not change this industry?
Ad break? No, that's not an ad. This podcast is brought to you by GUTT, GGUTT, which is the platform I launched to augment human capabilities focused on creativity, design, co-creation, and critical thinking. I would love to know more about you and your preferences to continue producing this kind of content. So type in go.gutt.com/talks. It takes 60 seconds to complete. That's go.ggutt.com/talks. Now let's get going. Going back to what you're doing, I took a few notes when you had your actually panel discussion, and you have subscription, leasing, buying, and sharing. The interesting side of things is the sharing side you're discussing, because you said 96% the car stands still. But what you're doing is you mentioned a house, which is an asset, and the car gets devalued as soon as it's out.
Yeah.
And what you're doing, you're getting people to make money out of it, and you're just involving everybody, the community, where people can make money out of their car. This is going into Web3. This is unseen before in this industry. How did Volvo and the group allow you to do that?
I think, look, within the group, we're probably seen a bit as the wild horse in the stable, I like to call it, the experiment. I find it quite fascinating that I read so many articles about some of the car competitors, so the competitors in the car industry who say car sharing isn't working, which I think, is just hypocrisy. Look, if your main target is to sell as many cars as possible, you don't want car sharing to work, because the more you share cars, the less cars you're going to sell. So we wanted to make car sharing part of our integrated business model. So we want to prove that people do want to share their cars, which we now see is clearly happening. So you're right. So we basically said, we don't care if people buy our car or lease our car or subscribe to it. The subscription has become sort of a bit of our signature offer. It's like the Netflix of the car industry. You subscribe for 1 month. You don't have to buy it. So you basically buy mobility for 1 month. But the key thing, as you rightly say, is the sharing. Whether you lease it, buy it, or subscribe it, while you have the car, you can share it and make money with it. So you basically have a financial incentive to be more sustainable, because it's another point that really annoys me in the industry. Suddenly everybody is sustainable, which, sorry for my French, is bullshit. It is not true. You don't become sustainable by suddenly having electric cars. If the car is standing still for 96% of the time, if your business model consists of selling a product that stands still for 96% of the time, you are not sustainable. So we basically said, let's make sure that people share the car. And the more you share it, the more you basically contribute to a more sustainable mobility, and that if you have a financial incentive to be sustainable, which, let's face it, still works. People are still driven for a big part by their wallet. So we said we can beg people to share their car and be nice and care about the environment. But if they make money by sharing the car, you have a win-win. You have a financial incentive and you contribute to a more sustainable mobility concept. So that's what we're doing. And I'm so happy to see that the sharing is growing very rapidly, including in Italy.
Yeah, you said Italy is a big market for you, actually.
Yeah,
when
it
everybody
is.
thought it wouldn't.
Yeah, and that's one of my favorite stories, actually. When we launched the concept, there were two markets. I would say Italy even more than Germany, but there were two markets, Italy and Germany. As I said, Italy even more, where I remember some of your colleagues came to me and said, Alain, forget it. This is never going to work in Italy. In Italy, the car is religious. It's part of our personality, and you don't understand that. The Italians will never share their car. They want to own it. It's part of our identity. It's like fashion. It's like our clothes. It's part of who we are. And now the reality is proving it's not like that. There is a lot of Italians who are ready to share their car, who are realizing that owning a car is maybe not clever because it's just standing there all the time. So if I share it, I can make some money and it serves a good purpose. So it's all these, and that's where maybe back to your point, Maria, the gut. You can look at statistics and say Italians will never share their car. Or you can say, sorry, there's a gut feeling. Why would Italians not be more reasonable like any other people in terms of something that makes sense? And of course, there's a lot of Italians who will never share their car, of course, but there's enough Italians who are ready to share their car.
Yeah, and actually, I haven't visited your offices yet in
You
Italy, but I'm
should, you
planning to
should.
next week. I'm in the UK at the moment, so
I
but
hereby
I will.
invite you. I hereby invite you. You should really come and see it.
I will. I saw a background. It looks really cool. And actually, question on that one. Do
Yeah.
you use this as a showroom? How do people come to you, and who are your ideal customers?
I think that our ideal customers, in the beginning, we were talking about millennials. We then realized it's not at all about age. And we also realized millennials hate to be called millennials. But we realized it's not a matter of age, it's a matter of mentality. We see that our customers are much younger than average car customers. Believe it or not, but the average car buying customer in Europe is around 55 years old. And our customers are, I think, just over 40 on average. So they're clearly younger, but they're not just the millennials. It's people from 25 to 70. But they all share this one thing, is they are just fed up with buying a car. They don't think it's needed. They don't want to go to a dealership, negotiate price. So it's a mindset. And there's people who, most of all, want to do something else. They see it differently, and they live in the cities, in and around the cities. So we're very urban. So these are our people, and they come to our clubs. We have 12 clubs now, 2 in Italy, Rome and Milan. And usually people who come to our club have never heard even of Lynk&Co. The brand is new to them. They discover the brand there. And they think, what is this? Is this a concept store? Is it a bar? And then they suddenly say, oops, there's a car. And then they get to know the brand. And I think it's a nice way to get to know the brand, because if it was just dealerships with cars, we would only attract people who are looking to buy a car, whereas we want to attract a more wider audience. And when it comes to the office here, I'm a strong believer that the environment that people work in is so important in terms of what they do. Look, when I have an interview here for somebody who applies for a job in Lynk&Co, I don't have to say anything. By the time they hit this room that you see on this picture, by the time they come to this room, they already say like, oh my God, this is so different. And I haven't even said anything yet because the environment creates almost the brand a bit. And I'm a strong believer in that if you create the right environment, it already does half of the message.
The question here is also because obviously the listeners are not only in Italy, they're more scattered and many are in the US.
Okay.
I'm trying to dig deeper. So where are your other offices? I know it's primarily Europe, but where in Europe?
Yeah, we're for the moment in 7 countries in Europe: Belgium, Netherlands, Sweden, Germany, France, Italy, and Spain. Then we're looking at expansion also to Central and Eastern Europe. That's where we are. We have a very different business model in China where we are as well, where we have a more traditional concept that is totally handled by the Geely Group. And we have, I would say, my ambition still is to go to the US, but that's more an ambition than a plan. But we're planning now to expand also to other countries and outside of Europe. In Europe, the plans; outside of Europe, ambitions.
Just going back to then knowing your customers, it's true that it changes from a place to another. I remember when I was working in consulting, I did research across different countries in Europe on cars, believe it or not, and the emotional attachment to see, just to explore the markets. And the emotional connection linked to specific cars that could remind people in a certain country about, let's say, World War II, and in another country, it would make them think or relate to some adventures and can be really different and then can affect the way some cars are sold. I don't know how to frame this in your perspective. Are you discovering new things every day?
Yeah, I am. And of course, the nice thing about doing something else than the rest is doing is that you hit surprises. And of course, if you do something that hasn't been done before, you take bigger risks, but you also discover things and you constantly correct and fine tune. But I am just surprised that what we see now is that the percentage of people who want something else than buying a car is much bigger than we thought. And to your point, it's true that we see different things in Spain than we see in Germany. But overall, the trend is the same, is that we see this growing trend that people are ready to spend money on being mobile rather than saying, I want to spend money on a product that makes me mobile. We see that trend happening. And look, my view, I've been saying this for years, and I may be wrong, I don't think so. I think the future of mobility is not going to be a product brand, but a service brand, which I think is already happening now, but we don't seem to notice it. But I think the future is a service and not a product. I always make the two comparisons. You don't fly to Paris with a Boeing, you fly with Air France. You don't care what plane it is, you just fly Air France. So it's the service provider that matters, not the product. But also, you don't go to the city center with a Toyota Prius or a BMW. You go to the city center with an Uber. So the service provider is starting to matter more than the product. And I think that's a sign of what is to come. And I've always said with Lynk&Co, we don't want to be a product brand with a service, but a service brand with a product. Because I think that is what the future of this industry will be and should be.
You're preaching to the converted here when you talk about service and the customer experience, because that's my background and that's one of the reasons I started the podcast as well, because I was really pissed off, put it that way, with a car rental company specifically. That was the trigger actually to start. And this is why I think just spreading the word on how people like you actually think and their experiences can help tremendously people in different businesses and industries, specifically in the car industry also, because there are lots of potential, because you also invited people to come and do stuff in the space because there's plenty of room, lots of opportunities. And this, I think I want to touch on one thing. Since you're a JV as Lynk&Co, right? It's a joint venture between, you said, Volvo and the other group, Geely, in China. How do you view actually corporations innovating and venture building?
Yeah, it's a good question and a difficult one. I personally don't think you can generalize it. I think there's big companies that really drive innovation a lot. There's others that don't. I personally believe in corporations and joint ventures because particularly in the car industry, where if you look at the product of a car, it has everything. It's a piece of furniture. It's a piece of hi-fi in terms of music. It's a piece of heating, of air conditioning, of steering, of high technology, of IT. And to say that we can do all of that best would be super arrogant. So you want to work together with different players who all have their expertise. But when it comes to innovation, I think it's very different by industry. And look, my personal view is I think that this industry is one of the industry that talks most about innovation, but proves it least. And I know I don't make myself popular with it, but that's my personal view. Look, I always make the very simple example, not very popular, but I love to repeat it. I often show some of my colleagues a picture of the Ford T of 1903. And that has a wash wiper on the front windshield to keep the rain from the window. That's 1903. Today, 2023, exactly 120 years later, we have two wash wipers, a rubber stick doing exactly the same. Now, there is no engineer on this planet that can convince me not engineer, that the best way to keep rain from a window is still a rubber sting that goes left to right, exactly the same as in 1903. And yet it got better than in 1903, but it's still the same thing. So I don't know. Look, I heard lately, I'm not necessarily an Elon Musk fan, but Elon Musk said some time ago, the problem with a lot of engineers is that they're trying to improve things that shouldn't exist in the first place. And I think there's some reality in that. Yeah. So I think innovation in some industries, including in the car industry, is way more limited than what we claim it to be.
Can I ask you, you mentioned you're not a big Elon Musk fan. What is it that makes you say this?
I think, and look, when I look at what Elon Musk has achieved as a person, I think it's amazing. So from that point of view, I think respect, incredible. But I personally believe that the values, how you treat people is so important. I think we try to achieve something, but I try to do it with the team and create a culture where people feel part and feel happy. I'm a simple believer that when people like what they do, they will do it better. I don't see that necessarily reflected in the other culture.
Yeah. He said something, actually, just going back to features, that eventually the seats will become, in a Tesla, put it that way, very smart, where you won't need an airbag if there's an accident, because it would know your weight distribution, who's sitting, like a child, an adult, a teenager, whatever. I know this is going into features, but what do you think of this?
Oh, you may be right.
You...
Look, and I think this industry lacks visionaries, and I think he is one. But this is, again, one of these things. Somebody invented airbags, which in fact, per se, you could say clever, but there must be something after airbags. But nobody thinks of that. We just try to make airbags better. So he may be right. Look, I've been saying nobody can convince me that the seat belt that Volvo invented in 1959 is today the best way to keep you to avoid collision in the car. I don't believe that. And every time I step into a car at the back, and when elder people who really struggle to get that safety belt over, and people who get annoyed that their shirt or their dress gets wrinkled because of safety belt, I just cannot believe that there is no better thing than a safety belt, which is super inconvenient and old-fashioned. But we just keep on doing it. And I think it's good that there's people like Elon Musk who question that. And I hope he's right on the airbags, because I don't think he's necessarily wrong. But there's so many things. A car is full of anachronisms, and we just accept them. So I hope he's right.
I just love the seat belt you mentioned.
It's a terrible thing. No, it's a terrible thing. You sit in the back and you have to look for it, and it's so inconvenient. And now in the winter, when you have these thick coats, you don't find it. And a car is such a high-tech machine, and then the safety belt is almost like the opposite of it. So it's still a very, very good thing, but it's just, yeah, it's from 1959, and you see it and you feel it.
Yeah, I like the way you said it because it's Volvo that invented it, actually. That's
Yes.
one of the things I knew as a kid. And you saying that here, I was going to say, ooh, I just love the fact that you're saying this like that because it's true. It's looking at things differently.
Yeah.
And that's the whole thing. And your model, actually, doing all those things, I would want to even say this is like a super app for the whole mobility thing, and you do whatever you want with it. Now, this will be maybe replicated, copied wildly, because you just do whatever you want with this asset that is out there. Use it, not use it. What's the vision? And was that the pitch when you first went to China?
Yeah, that was the pitch to say, look, let's face it. My simple view is when I started in the car industry, you had good cars and you had bad cars. And you had very bad cars. Today, all cars are good. The difference between the best and a good car, the average customer cannot feel because you need to go like on a racetrack and drive like a lunatic to find the differences. So all cars are good. So my view is there's also too many car brands, more than enough car brands. We don't know anymore what to choose. So I said, if the car is not radically different, which need to be honest, ours isn't. It's a very good car, but it's not radically different. Or if it's not radically cheaper, which it also isn't, then let's make sure that you differentiate in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I went to the owners and said, look, we can try to be better at doing the same that everybody does, or we can do something else. And then people come to us not just because we have a great car, but because we stand for something else. And that's my view. That's my theory. And look, I think a lot is copyable. People can copy the subscription model. They can start sharing. They can go at a lower price. I just think you can copy everything, but you can't copy an experience. And that's what we create with the brand, is try to create an experience. That's also why we have the clubs, so that you can build an experience which, even if people copy the product, the service, the price, you can never copy the experience. That's my personal view.
Yeah, and obviously you're not for everybody. You have your own, that will come to you. So
yeah, exactly. And look, that's also it's also an interesting point. I like it when you say that. Look, I spent my whole career making sure that we cover everybody. Let's have all the colors, because if somebody wants a pink car, then let's offer him a pink car. We're basically saying we have a black and a blue car. We have two colors. And that's it, because we think the car looks best in those two colors for the moment. And if you really, really want a red car, bad luck, it won't be a Lynk&Co, because we don't have a red car. So yeah, we have a certain opinion, we have a certain view also on the world, on sustainability, on LGBTQ, we have our view. If you don't agree with that, that's fine. There's other brands for that, where we stand for something, and those people who feel part of that, please join us. If you don't, it's fine. There's other brands.
So last thing here, what's a good piece of advice that you've been given that you want to give back in a way, because you have your journey that started, and then after 36 years in the industry, you decided to reinvent many things, including the way you're doing things? That's a big question, but is that linked to you as well, your upbringing that led you to how you think today, who you are today?
Yeah, maybe a little bit. For me, the number one lesson that I have learned, and my mother used to tell me that, it's like, I think for every really good idea on this planet, there's more reasons not to do it than to do it. But if there's only one good reason to do it, you should do it and never give up. And I spent the first months in my job hearing from everybody why this will not work, why it can't work, and why it is wrong, and why it is stupid, all the reasons why it can't work. But I still believed there is a reason to do that. It's more sustainable. It's different. People don't need to own a car necessarily. You can share it. People will want to share it. If there's one good reason to do something, don't give up and let people tell you why it's a bad idea. Listen to that, but use it as making sure that you strengthen your arguments and your process of making it happen. So, yeah, don't give up. That's a bit in my upbringing. If you believe in something, don't let others get you off track or bring you down. Just continue to go up.
Alain, thank you so much for this. I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add.
Oh, I think we covered so much. I've enjoyed this. No, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for listening. If you've derived value from the show, you can subscribe on platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Your feedback is incredibly important to us, so please consider rating the show or leaving a review. It's a fantastic way to help other podcast explorers discover our content. To gain more insights, visit our website at GGUTT.com. This is WGUTT.com, and see you next time.